Hello and welcome to the Kendo UI Q2 2013 release keynote. We're really happy and glad that you joined us today and are going to spend the next hour with us to look at what's new in Kendo UI. Before we do that, I want to make sure that you're aware that we're on Twitter, of course, and Facebook and all the fabulous social media. If you're not following us at Kendo UI, I would recommend you do that. That's where we're going to announce today's winners of some fabulous prizes. As a matter of fact, just by being here today, you are in the drawing for the HTC One Developer Edition, the Galaxy S4, the iPhone 5, as well as the Galaxy Nexus, and some tablets as well, the Galaxy 10 and the iPad mini. Lots of great prizes today. Simply by being here, you're eligible. And if you follow us at Kendo UI on Twitter, you'll know as soon as we announce the winners. We've got a lot of great stuff to talk to you about today. In fact, this is a packed release. We have a lot of big releases, but this release is very major. And as always, as you go through the release, as you look at what's new in the release, we'd always love to see you tag what you say with the Kendo UI hashtag so that we can follow your conversations and hopefully help you if you have any questions as you look at what's new. My name is Todd Englund. I'm EVP for Cross-Platform Tools and Services here at Telerik, where I look after products like Kendo UI and Icenium and Everlive and a lot of the great stuff we're doing here. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Todd Englund. I'm always there to hear your feedback. I love to hear from you guys directly. And of course, if you have any questions about today's announcements, I'd love to be able to answer those there as well. As I said, this is the Q2 2013 release, so this is our second major release of the year and our sixth major release overall. We've called our releases in the past spring, summer, and winter, though our friends in the southern hemisphere reminded us that that's not quite right. That would be fall, winter, summer. So to avoid confusion on summer and winter and summer, we are going to make sure we stick to that Q2 2013 naming here for this release. So second release of the year, next major update. Some of you may remember, if you joined us for the Q1 release, that we had a lot of great stuff, and we also are doing a lot of things in the community. Since then, we've had the opportunity to do more great events like I/O13, Google I/O13 in San Francisco, where we spent a few days showing off Kendo UI in the Google I/O invited sandbox, and if you're lucky, you might have even seen the Kendo UI truck driving around the Moscone Center there in front of Google I/O. We've also been at FluentConf, a lot of other great events, TechEd. Hopefully you've had a chance to meet some of you out there. If we did, thanks for stopping by and saying hi. Hope you liked what you saw. If we didn't, we've got a lot more events coming up this year where you can find Kendo UI out and about around the globe. Also, since our last release, Icenium from Telerik has had some major releases and some major feature introductions. If you've never heard of Icenium before, it is an absolutely great tool for doing cross-platform mobile development. Particularly when you're building hybrid applications using Cordova, or as many people know it, PhoneGap, Icenium is what makes it just dead simple. In our last release of Icenium, which ships updates quite frequently, in fact, we shipped two things that are important to call out to you today. One, something called Icenium Everlive, our mobile backend as a service, makes it very easy to connect your mobile applications to user management services, data storage services, file storage services. And in the last release for Everlive, last few releases, we've also added things like social authentication. So your users can now authenticate to your applications using things like their Twitter ID or their Facebook ID, as well as push notifications. So now you can do that through Everlive as well. Icenium is also introduced, and is the first in the world to introduce, full support for custom Cordova plugins. And what that means is that you can easily upload and use any custom Cordova plugin in the Icenium cloud build process. So now you have basically unlimited capability in your hybrid applications. If you can't do it with HTML and JavaScript, you can grab a plugin, add it to Icenium, and we'll make that part of your build. So definitely check out Icenium if you've not so far. If nothing else, check out what's new in Icenium Everlive as well as the custom Cordova plugins. I think you'll really like what you see there. Meanwhile, we're here today to talk about Kendo UI, and as many of you know, we are here to provide everything you need to build sites and mobile apps with HTML and JavaScript. Everything from the UI widgets to the underlying data sources and validation frameworks and tools. We really want to make it as easy as possible to build those professional applications using HTML and JavaScript. In our last release, we said that we were providing everything else you need with things like support for Windows Phone 8, new data visualizations like sparklines and data bars, as well as wrapping out our server wrappers with support for Java, JSP, and PHP, joining our existing .NET wrappers. So it took a lot of the foundations of what we'd started in Kendo UI Web, DataViz, and mobile and extended it to add the core things you needed. So what's new then in this release? What's new in Q2 2013? Well, if the last release was everything else you needed, this release is all about modern, mobile, and lightning fast applications. And throughout the improvements that you'll find in Kendo UI Web, DataViz, and mobile, all of our improvements really key somewhere into those three themes. In fact, in Kendo UI Web, one of the most significant things we've delivered to our framework is the brand new scheduler widget. And scheduler has been one of the most top requested widgets for a long time, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, but that shows up in this release. And DataViz, joining all of our richly visually animated charts and graphs and gauges. In this release, we add several new chart types, including the radar and polar chart types, as well as support for barcodes and QR codes, and a brand new thing called Canvas Rendering Mode, all of which we'll talk about a little bit more later. And in Kendo UI Mobile, in addition to adding new widgets like the drawer widget, something very popular, we've also added something that we think is pretty important. And the idea of modern, mobile, and lightning fast, we spent a lot of time in this release really deeply analyzing how we could squeeze every last frame out of a mobile device and bake those improvements, bake those performance optimizations into our framework so you can leverage them as well. So all of that's now in Kendo UI Mobile, and as you can see here, we've also had something called the Flat UI theme. So in addition to be able to create applications that look and feel native, as you see on the left, you can also now create applications that have a application identity, or they look the same, generally speaking, everywhere. And this Flat UI theme helps you do that while delivering even more performance optimizations to mobile devices. As a matter of fact, the Flat UI theme is a global improvement in this release, and across Kendo UI Web, Mobile, and DataViz, you will find a new universal flat theme. So if you do like that Flat UI concept and you want that to apply to your DataViz and to your Kendo UI Web widgets as well, that is all available in this release. So I'd like to get things kicked off right then and invite my first guest presenter to our digital stage, Brandon Satcham, Kendo UI Program Manager. He's going to join me now to talk about some of these mobile, modern, and lightning fast improvements and show us how we're improving Kendo UI Mobile and show off some of this new Flat UI theme. So first up to the stage, Brandon, and the stage is yours.
Thanks, Todd. Mobile apps have been a huge part of our focus for Kendo UI in Q2. Not only have we added some killer new widgets and theme updates, but we've also made fundamental performance improvements to the very core of the framework itself. The result? For our Q2 release, Kendo UI Mobile is the very embodiment of modern, mobile, and lightning fast. Let's take a look at some of the highlights of this release. For starters, we've added some great new widgets to Kendo UI Mobile, including the increasingly popular drawer menu widget and a mobile-optimized version of our web slider widget. We've also added support for binding the Kendo UI hierarchical data source to the mobile list view, which allows you to create multi-level list views in your apps with a single hierarchical data set. In addition to new and improved widgets, we also spent a lot of time in Q2 working on a brand new universal theme for Kendo UI Mobile. And while we know that many of you love the auto-adaptive feature of Kendo UI that gives you the ability to render a native look and feel to iOS, Android, BlackBerry, and Windows Phone users, we also know that with some apps you want a brand that's consistent across mobile operating systems. Enter the new Kendo UI Mobile Universal theme, a flat UI influenced theme that looks and performs great on every mobile OS. Speaking of performance, the features I'm most excited about to share with you in this release are the across-the-board performance improvements that we've made to Kendo UI Mobile, including faster view transitions, the addition of kinetic scrolling to virtualized data sources, and finally, that new Flat UI theme. That's right. A flatter yet still beautiful theme means faster downloads, smoother on-device rendering, and better end-user performance. Combined, these features will make your Kendo UI mobile apps faster than they've ever been. And all you need to start experiencing these gains is to update to the latest bits. Now that's awesome. To put all of our mobile improvements in perspective, I'd like to share a couple of numbers with you. The first is 2, as in 2x. With today's release, Kendo UI mobile view transitions are now twice as fast as they were previously, meaning that your apps will immediately benefit from smoother, more native feeling transitions. And once again, all you need to do to see this gain is to update your apps to use today's release. The next number is 30, as in 30%. Apps built using the new universal theme for Kendo UI Mobile will benefit from a 30% improvement in rendering time on the mobile device, which means faster, more responsive apps. The new Flat UI theme uses all of the widgets and conventions as our native device themes, so opting in is simple. The final number is 7, as in iOS 7. By now, we've all seen the early shots of the flatter direction that Apple is taking iOS later this year, and Kendo UI has you covered. For starters, our new, and as it just so happens timely, flat theme for Kendo UI Mobile already looks right at home on iOS 7. So if you're on board with going flat, look no further. Additionally, I'm excited to announce that Kendo UI Mobile will support iOS 7 out of the box later this year. Stay tuned to the blogs and our roadmap for details. Now, the final mobile feature I want to talk about today is our server wrappers. Now, we know that many of you love the simplicity and familiarity afforded by our server wrappers for ASP.NET MVC, PHP, and Java JSP. And I'm happy to share that we've extended our ASP.NET MVC wrappers to include support for Kendo UI mobile applications as well. So just as with the wrappers for Web and DataViz, our ASP.NET MVC wrappers for Kendo UI Mobile allow you to create your mobile app and its behavior inside of your ASP.NET MVC views. And we take care of omitting the markup and client-side JavaScript required for you. So if you're building Kendo UI mobile apps and leveraging server navigation features that we enabled in our Q1 release, you'll want to check out the latest additions to our ASP.NET MVC server wrappers. First, let's take a look at the new ASP.NET MVC server wrappers for Kendo UI Mobile. And as with any other type of wrappers project, I'm going to start by opening a new application or creating a new ASP.NET MVC 4 application, as I've done here. Now first, let's take a look at our controller. So inside of my home controller, I've got a couple of actions, and I'm working against a set of data, basically just a collection of people. So this is going to be a very simple people viewer application. And I've got my set of data. There's not really much in here except their name and whether or not the person is a friend. So just a Boolean value that specifies that. So for my index view and people view, I'm just going to return that entire list of people. And then for my friends view, I'm going to filter the list based on those people that are just friends. And so that'll operate the two main views in my application. So the first thing that I'm going to do, as I would with a Kendo UI mobile application on the client side, is to create a mobile layout for my app. But I'm going to do that inside of my main layout, inside of my main Razor view. And you'll notice in these types of applications that you'll specify a lot of the main layout sort of shell pieces inside of your layout view, and then each one of your individual views will just contain the view specific stuff for your Kendo UI mobile application. So I'll copy my view in here, and you'll notice, similar as when you're working with Web or DataViz, that I'm using the wrapper syntax to specify my mobile layout, to give it a name, to specify the nav bar and the header, buttons to specify the footer, and my tab strip as well. And so that's how I'm defining my application. It's really nice. So inside of the views then, I'm going to create my view for just the main index view, for my list of all of the people. So I have my controller, my model here I'm specifying is a person, and then I'm specifying my mobile view with a name, giving it the default layout, and then inside of the content specifying a mobile list view, and then in this case I'm looping over my collection of model data. So again, the convenience feature here inside of the server wrappers is that you're working with your backend data sources just like you would in a regular ASP.NET MVC application, and our server wrappers deal with translating that into the necessary client-side code. So once I save that, I'm almost done. I just need to now initialize my application. So I'll come back into the layout, and I'm going to specify the Kendo mobile application. And I'm also going to set the server navigation property to true. And server navigation is, again, what allows me to work with Kendo UI Mobile inside of an ASP.NET MVC application, where Kendo UI Mobile is very client-based by default. Server navigation allows Kendo UI Mobile to go and fetch remote views and include those inside of the main application shell. So let's go ahead and run this in the simulator now. We can see how we're doing. Now open this up. My simulator is a appropriately mobile-sized browser window. And you'll notice now I have my list of people. So I got my main people viewer, and I've got my drawer button here. This is going to open up my drawer menu, that new widget that we've added in Q2, but it doesn't do anything. So I need to go back and actually add my drawer. So the first thing that I'm going to do before I do that is I'm going to specify another view so that we can switch between those. And this is going to be my friends view. Friends view is going to be very similar with the exception of now, if you'll remember from the controller, this is a filtered list. So I'm going to add each of these people to this view with a little star icon because they're my friends. So, well, golly, that makes them stars, right? Now, the next thing that I'll do, or the final thing that I'm going to do, is add my actual drawer menu. Again, back into the layout. This is going to be a little bit of a longer block of text, but you can see here I'm specifying some attributes for the width. I'm specifying the views that the drawer needs to know about, and then the actual content of the drawer menu is just another mobile list view with some grouping information to it. So I'm specifying some groups for links. I've got some dummy links here and also some main links for my people and friends views. And you'll notice here that instead of using hash fragments, I'm actually using full-on URLs to the actual actions inside of my controller. And again, server navigation makes this possible, and Kendo UI helps to make this work as well. So now if I run the app again, you'll notice that I'll get this nice fancy drawer menu here once it loads. And then I can navigate very easily between my views. So I've got my nice little cute drawer here. I can navigate to my friends view to see my list of friends, and navigate to my home view as well. So as you can see, these additional wrappers for Kendo UI Mobile really make it dead simple to build mobile websites and apps using ASP.NET MVC while embracing the power of Kendo UI Mobile. And that's really exciting. So for this next demo, I'm going to switch back to a Kendo UI client-side app just to give you a chance to see how some of these new features look inside of that environment as well. Now, I'm inside of Sublime Text as my editor. I have the iPhone simulator open as well. As with our wrappers example, the first thing that I want to do is create a layout to actually contain my app, right? So this is the main layout of the app itself. I've got a couple of views, pretty plain. I've seen this stuff before. And then I'll initialize that app inside of my JavaScript. So I'm specifying a new Kendo UI mobile application, and the one new feature you'll notice here is I'm specifying the skin of flat. I'm specifying this new uniform flat UI theme that we've added for Kendo UI mobile, and you'll notice that this is different than the platform configuration option because Kendo still cares about the platform value, but the skin really gives you that uniform theme or that uniform look and feel across platforms, or enough differences so that you can consistently apply your brand. So once we've done those two things, we can run our very basic, very simple app, and I have my nice little Kendo UI mobile shell with that new flat theme that looks really nice and simple. I'm really excited to build the rest of my app around this. So the next thing that I'll do is I'm going to add a drawer menu. And for this app, you may have noticed I'm calling this thing the Kendo Runner. And Kendo Runner app effectively is just a way for me to manage all of my runs that I typically track in Runkeeper, and also the shoes that I use for individual runs so that I know when I need to buy a new pair of shoes and things like that. It's very important so that my knees don't fall apart on me. So I've added my drawer menu here, and similar to what you saw with the server wrappers, I'm specifying some information like the width, I'm specifying the views that it controls, and then I'm also specifying some links. In this case, you'll notice I'm using the hash fragments for my runs, shoes, races, things like that. But that's my drawer menu. And then the final thing I need to do in order to get that to work is I'm going to actually add that to into my nav bar, so that I can get that drawer activated, save that, rerun the app. When I open it back up, I'll see my nice little drawer menu here, and I can open that. There's no data in here, but you can see all the information that I've added inside of this. So that's nice. I've got my app shell looking really good. So the next step then is going to be to add some content, actually get my runs and shoe information tracked in there. And for this app, I used Icenium Everlive, and Icenium Everlive is a brand new offering from Telerik that allows you to specify cloud data types and store that value. It's a backend as a service solution that really makes it easy to work with mobile apps, and especially Kendo UI mobile apps, because our data source supports Everlive as a first-class type. For that data source. So querying and updating data from Everlive really couldn't be any simpler. So I've specified some data here for runs and shoes inside of Everlive. I've downloaded the SDK, included that SDK inside of my application so that I have access to that, and now I can get moving with Everlive. So I'll first start by creating a template for my run list. This is going to have all of my list of runs. I'm going to specify a little runner image there, the distance, duration, and then a nicely formatted date. So next then, I'm going to go and create the data source back in my JavaScript. So you'll notice here that I've specified it's just a regular Kendo UI data source, but in this case the type is Everlive. Nothing I need to else specify in the transport except for the actual type name, the main content type in Everlive, which I've specified. And then I'm also turning on server paging, setting a page size, and then doing server sorting and setting a sort on the date as well. And then the next thing that I need to do is actually configure, I've configured the Everlive SDK, I've downloaded it, but I need to actually go and log into Everlive in order to do anything. So I'm going to create a new instance of the Everlive object. I'm going to log in with some dummy username and password. And then inside of the completion of the promise, I'm going to fetch the data from my data source and then use that data inside of a Kendo UI mobile list view. And then the last thing you'll notice, and this goes with our performance updates in Q2, is I'm specifying endless scrolling on that list view. And so I'll get a nice kinetic scrolling view, even though I have 300 records in here, just showing 20 at a time. And as I scroll down, I'll get a nice smooth load there. So we'll go back in and reload this. Should get my list of runs, and as I scroll down, it's a really nice list, and as it hits the bottom of that threshold, you'll notice that it refreshes and I get this nice scroll here. Really easy to use, and getting that data from Everlive is so simple, and it looks really nice in this flat theme. So that's great. So I've got some runs, but I need to add some more data. This really is about tracking shoes against those runs. So I'm going to get my shoe view working now, and I'll go ahead and add another template in here as well for this view. This view is a little bit different. I'm showing the brand and the name and also an image of the shoe, but I'm also specifying a link. What I want the user to be able to do is click on an individual shoe and then go and edit that, and I'll do that in the last step of this demo. So I'm passing in the ID of the individual shoe on the query string for that value. So I'll go back in, just as I've done with my runs. I'm going to come in and add my shoe data source. Again, it's an Everlive data source, this time sorting based on name. And then finally, I'm going to go back into my post login promise here and specify the load for the mobile list view for my shoes. So I can rerun the app. I've already specified everything in the drawer, so the drawer knows where to go when I click on the shoes link. And here's my list of shoes, the shoes that I own. And you can see the value for each of those. And now I want to be able to actually add the form. So this is my final step. I want to add an edit form for my shoes. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is to create a new view for my form itself. So this is a simple view. It has the form, it has a title, there's some changes to the nav bar for save and back button, and then all the individual items, the brand, the name. You'll also notice here that I've created this slider here for maximum mileage. So this is actually going to be my Kendo UI mobile slider value that I talked about a little bit earlier. We'll configure that here in a second. And then the last thing that I've added here that's important to note is my data-show. And that attribute tells Kendo UI Mobile every time this view is opened, call this method. And so we're going to go and add that method now. And you'll notice I am getting a reference to all of my individual form fields. I'm getting that ID that was passed in on the link and using that to actually get the proper shoe from the data source. If I get a valid shoe, I'm going to set all of those values properly on the form. And then finally, I'm going to create a new Kendo UI slider widget using the Kendo slider plugin method. And this is really exciting. The Kendo UI slider is going to be a mobile friendly slider. So it's the same widget as we have for Kendo UI Web, but when it's used inside of a mobile context, it's going to know what's happening. It knows it's being used in mobile. It's going to look appropriate. It's going to be styled appropriately. And let me just go ahead and show you that instead of talking about it so you can see it in action. Open up my shoes list, and then when I click on an individual shoe, I get the information that I can go in and edit, and I can move my slider around, and it is adapted to the Kendo UI mobile theme, to the flat skin. Didn't have to do anything extra in order to use that slider inside of this Kendo UI mobile application. So that's really exciting. So, and there you have it. So with the addition of server wrappers for Kendo UI Mobile, a new drawer menu widget, a universal skin, and more, there's a lot to love in the latest version of Kendo UI Mobile. Back to you, Todd.
Thanks, Brandon. That's some very cool stuff. I hope you guys really saw those demos and really understand how cool that is. And I think you guys really love playing with this. The Everlive things, Isenium Everlive that Brandon showed, again, you can find that by visiting isenium.com, and you'll find direct access there to Isenium Everlive. You can play around with that and check out the services that Brandon was showing off in his demos. I also want to call out another new thing that Isenium shipped in the recent months, in the last update. Something that will be particularly interesting to you if you are working with Kendo UI Mobile, as Brandon was showing just a few minutes ago. One of the new things that's very cool that we've been working on for a while now is a visual designer. For those of you that love to have that sort of drag and drop experience or that visual design experience, we've been building that into Isenium so that you can build your hybrid mobile apps using Kendo UI Mobile completely visually. So when you go to Isenium now, whether you're using the Isenium Mist browser-based editor or the Isenium Graphite Windows-based editor, you'll find this great interactive visual designer experience, which allows you to see your code and your app in a split view like this, or just the designer, and has a great set of UI library tools, this for now powered by Kendo UI Mobile, as well as interactive inspector and property inspector, so you can very quickly and easily toggle between your elements and explore the properties and configuration options available. If you've been dying to have Kendo UI Mobile or anything mobile with a visual designer, then I would encourage you, in addition to Everlive and custom Cordova plugins, to rush to isenium.com right now. Check that out. Some great new improvements there for you, especially if you're building mobile apps using Kendo UI Mobile. Next, let's switch gears and talk about Kendo UI Web. As I mentioned at the opening of today's online keynote, there are some significant improvements across Kendo UI Web. Some things that I didn't mention, but I'll mention now. Major improvements to the Kendo UI Web editor, not only in the browser, where we've added things like support for tables, but also some cool responsive behaviors where the editor can now work great across web and automatically adapt to work great on mobile as well. We've also significantly improved and refactored the styling and the layout for our upload widget. And as I mentioned up front, the brand new scheduler, a major widget which we know has been asked for by a lot of you for a long time, introduced in this release as a beta just because it is so big and we want to make sure we get it right before we remove that beta tag. But a huge new piece of this release, and rather than waste any more time, I'm going to invite my next presenter to the digital stage here, Burke Holland, Kendo UI developer advocate. He's going to come now and show us what this new scheduler is all about and show it to us in action. And I think he's got some pretty cool demos for us. So Burke, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Todd. The Kendo UI scheduler. What can I even say about the scheduler? Maybe that it has 606 user voice votes and 44 comments to boot on one single widget request? Clearly, this feature is one for the record books. And I don't know that such a highly demanded piece of functionality really even needs an intro from me, but for those of you that are not entirely familiar with kind of the concept of a scheduler, you can think of it as essentially the entire calendar portion of Outlook bundled up into a widget that runs on the web. Telerik has a long and very proud history of schedulers, and we wanted to do this right. And the Kendo UI scheduler is finally here. It's as stunning as you and I have both come to expect from Kendo UI, and I want to show it to you in action right now. The other day I called up my doctor for an appointment, and I realized that the scheduling aspect of the whole scenario is just completely busted. I'm on the phone and I'm not at my computer. The person scheduling the appointment is looking at a calendar that I can't see. My calendar is on my phone, which is currently on my ear. It's a complete shot in the dark as to whether or not I'm even going to be able to make the appointment after I check my own calendar and then realize that I just scheduled the appointment for the same time as the Q2 release Keynote. It's a disaster. And because I tend to do things like that, it would be great if my doctor had an online scheduling application. They don't, so I decided we'll build one for them. I'm going to go ahead and use Twitter Bootstrap in my application because, as anybody on this team can tell you, I am not a designer. So we'll start off by creating a simple login form. So I'll create a hero unit here and ask people to sign in, and then add a couple form fields. There we go. Just a username, password, and we'll post this login URL, which is going to redirect to the schedule screen. Let me show you how this works. Log in with my username, super secret password. There we go, and sign in. And this is the schedule screen. It's blank. Let's put something here. I've already included Twitter Bootstrap as well as the Kendo UI common and default CSS files, and of course Kendo UI and jQuery. Now, every Twitter Bootstrap application has to have the ubiquitous nav bar. So there we go. That looks great. All right. Now let's go ahead and add in some content here. And just like all the widgets, the scheduler requires an HTML element from which to be initialized. So we'll open the script tag down at the bottom. Perfect. And then I'm going to create a document ready function just to make sure that everything is ready to go here. And inside of that, we will select the schedule element and then initialize it with the Kendo scheduler method. Refresh the page, and this is the Kendo UI scheduler. You can see I can navigate with these arrows between days. There's a week and a day view that I can go between. And if I double click on one of these cells here, or these rows, I can enter in an event. And you can see I've got date time pickers. These Kendo widgets are really on display here. If I make it an all day event, it goes into the all day column. If I just make it a regular scheduled event, then it drops down into the schedule. And I can delete it by clicking the X, and I get a nice little confirmation. Now, doctors probably don't want to see patients at midnight, and they probably don't want people scheduling all-day appointments. So let's modify this scheduler just a bit by adding a few configuration values and really start to make this scheduler work for our application. The first thing that we want to do here is really just restrict the times that we have available in the scheduler. So we can specify a start and an end time, which just means we're open at 8 and we close at 5. And we can remove the all-day slot from the scheduler just by toggling that setting. Now the next thing that we need to do is add in resources, and our resources are doctors. So the scheduler has the concept of resources, and we can add those in here. You can have multiple resources, but for this application we just need a doctor's resource, which will read from an endpoint which I've cheated and already created, and that way when I bring up the edit form, the scheduler automatically adds them in, and they're even color coded because I included that data. Now, we can still select the start and end time, and we can select all day. This edit form really just doesn't work for our app, so we need to create a custom template for our edit form. So I'm going to come up here and create a custom editor template. There we go. And each of these fields is actually bound to the data source of the scheduler with the name field. You see start there. And then down at the bottom, the resources drop-down list actually has a data role drop-down list, and it's bound to the doctor ID, and I'm using a shared data source. So I'm going to pull this data source out of the scheduler here, and I'm going to create a shared data source for the doctors. There we go. And I'm just pushing these results into an observable array so that it doesn't read more than one time. I already have the data, I don't need it again. And then I will just assign the doctor's data source here for the resource. And then the next thing we need to do is add the editable attribute to the scheduler so that it knows to use our template when it shows the pop-up window. So there we go. Now if we refresh and double click, all right, so we can create a new appointment. We've restricted the fields that the user is able to see. I can create a new appointment here. Of course, I want to see Dr. House, who doesn't, and save that appointment. Now, since we already know that I'm a cheater, it probably doesn't surprise you to know that I've already created a data source for the appointments. So let's wire that up to the scheduler and see what it's like to work with remote data. I'm going to go ahead and add an appointments data source. Now, this is a scheduler data source, which is very similar to the standard Kendo UI data source, So I'm going to specify the read URL on the transport, which returns a JSON result set, and then the ID on the model. And then specifically, I want to tell the scheduler that the start field and end field in my data set are date types, and it needs to know that for parsing correctly in the scheduler. Now we've got this, let's go ahead and add it in as the data source for the scheduler. So I'm just going to specify the data source. If I can type it correctly here, help me out, IntelliSense. There we go. And we'll just set that equal to appointments. And now that I've done that, I can refresh and you'll see all the appointments coming in from the database, and they're shown by color according to the doctor. And I can toggle between views here. And if I open one of these up, you can see someone just wants to say hi to Dr. Ross. It's awful nice. Let's go ahead and tweak this a little bit further. One of the things that I want to do is I want to modify the views just a little bit. We already have a day view and we have a week view as well, but I can also do a month view. So let me go ahead and add in a month view with the day and week views back. And then I'll add in an agenda view as well. Maybe we just want the doctors to see that piece of it. Additionally, I don't want people to be able to open up other appointments and see them, so I'm going to select editing, set editing to false or update to false. So they can double click, but nothing will happen. Let's also go ahead and add a legend for the doctor so we know which doctor is which color and will help us on the scheduler. So we'll add a template there, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in an element that I'm going to use as a list view. List views are great for displaying simple lists of repeating data. And then down here at the bottom, we'll drop the list view underneath the appointment scheduler and go ahead and initialize it. There we go. And this looks like a lot of code, but it's not bad. It's just setting the data source to the doctors, using the template, making it a selectable list view, and then the change event, we're just getting the currently selected item and then applying a filter to the data source for the scheduler. And then if the person selects the same doctor again, it essentially clears the filter out, returns all the items. So let's go ahead and look at this now. We've got this nice legend across the top. And of course, if I click on any one of these, you'll see it filter the scheduler below. And I can toggle between the different views here, and the filter is maintained, of course, across all these different views. If I click it again, then it comes back off. Now, we can get fine-grained control over all aspects of the scheduler virtually. So if I go back in and tweak the day view, I can actually take out the time and say put in maybe when you see the doctor's name on each one of these. That would help even more. So we can specify the event template, and I can actually tie directly into the resources object and get the text. So by doing just that, when we refresh, instead of seeing the time, what we'll see instead is the doctor's name. So now we have the doctor's name along with the color. This is a very clean, nice UI here. And we can continue to make this even more awesome by adding in some of the great things about HTML5 that Kendo UI exposes. You can tie directly into the effects framework to add a nice expand animation to the legend, which gives our application this beautiful sort of kinetic feel as it drops down from the top there. So it's really, really nice. And of course, all the filtering and view changing still works within the scheduler. It's really, really nice. Unfortunately, 10 minutes isn't nearly enough time for me to show you everything that the scheduler can do. It's got a rich set of features, and we paid very special attention to the documentation for this widget because we wanted to make sure that such a beautiful and gorgeous control was accompanied by simple instructions that came with a ton of code examples and samples to make this easy to use. And that is the Kendo UI scheduler. Todd?
Thanks, Burke. That was some very cool stuff. The scheduler is just impressive. What can I say? So a few notes about the scheduler again as we transition here. It is in a beta preview in this release, but we will be delivering constant updates to the scheduler as we get your feedback, and your feedback is definitely wanted. As we said, it is very well polished now for the things that are there. We know there are a few more APIs, a few more features that we need to add, and we want to make sure that we really get the polish on this right for such a major widget, and your feedback will help us do that and make sure we lock it in right before we pull off that beta tag. So we fully expect it to be non-beta before Q3, but in the meantime, jump in there, start playing with it, let us know what we can do to make it better, and we think you're really going to love what you find when you get out there and see it today. I also want to call your attention to another new demo we've released. We're constantly working on creating new demos and demo apps so that you can see Kendo UI in action and learn from some of these examples how to use it better in your own projects. In the last release, we talked about something new called the Kendo UI Music Store.com, which hopefully you visited and you have a mobile and web version there. In this release, I want to make you aware of another new demo called Kendo UI SalesHub.com, a little bit more line of business, data processing oriented. This is a great demo built by the Telerik Services team, which you can go find the source code for on GitHub. Play with the online demo, again, at KendoUISalesHub.com. And if you have any kind of application which deals with a lot of data, a lot of drill down, a lot of editing, this app is there to make it easier for you to see some full-scale example of how that can be done. So we hope this helps. We've got a lot of other great demos in the pipeline. I wish I could share more of them with you today, particularly for mobile, but we'll be releasing those very soon, so stay tuned. If you like learning by demos, we've got a lot of great stuff coming. Next, let's talk about DataViz. Kendo UI DataViz has always been a very rich suite of UI widgets with graphs and animations, all powered by SVG, designed to run and be cool across your desktop browsers and your mobile devices. In this release, we continue to deliver a lot of value for those looking for DataViz improvements. As I mentioned up front, some new chart types, radar charts and polar charts, as well as new barcode and QR code DataViz representations. So if you've been looking for ways to add those to your apps, you now have very easy ways of doing that with the framework. And we've also had something called the canvas rendering mode. Kendo UI DataViz has traditionally rendered all things using SVG, which is great for its vector scalability, makes great resolution on those high-density displays, very interactive, very easy to program against. But we know on some lower-powered mobile devices, particularly when you put lots of data visualizations on one screen, sometimes the pixel-based nature of canvas rendering can be even better. If it's a little bit less interactive, it can certainly be better for performance. So we've added in this release a brand new canvas rendering mode. All you have to do is turn it on, and automatically it'll switch from SVG to canvas rendering, and that can really help boost performance on low-powered mobile devices. Another great option for you to have in your toolbox. Before we transition to our next demo, I also want to mention something new that we think is really cool and you're really going to like it. We've been working on it for a while, and that's something called the Kendo UI Bootstrapper. We know every time you work with Kendo UI, there are a number of things that you wish could be easier, like starting new projects or finding potential problems in your Kendo UI code, and simple things like minifying your Kendo UI code or getting the smallest possible package. The Kendo UI Bootstrapper is a brand new tool we've created to help you do all of that. So it helps you work faster with Kendo UI. But sometimes it's easier to see something than to hear it explained. So once again, I'm going to invite to our digital stage Brandon Satrom to show us what this Kendo UI Bootstrapper is all about, as well as introduce us to some of those improvements in Kendo UI DataViz. So Brandon, once again, the stage is yours.
Thanks again, Todd, and hello again, everybody. I'm really excited to show you some of the cool new features in Kendo UI DataViz, while also giving you a first look at the Kendo UI Bootstrapper, a top secret project that we've been working on for the last several months. Now, as Todd mentioned, the Bootstrapper, which we're releasing today as a beta, is designed to be your go-to utility for building Kendo UI apps. It's not an IDE, though. The Kendo UI Bootstrapper is a standalone utility that provides support for scaffolding apps, managing live updates of running apps, performing static analysis and linting, optimizing build assets, and creating bundles. In other words, it's the perfect complement to whichever IDE you're using today. Now, to try the Bootstrapper out for yourself during the beta, you can head over to the Kendo UI Labs at labs.kendoui.com or check us out over at the Kendo Labs GitHub organization and go ahead and download it for yourself. Now, the Bootstrapper runs today as a Node.js application, at least for the time of the beta, so you're going to need to follow the instructions on the project homepage to get things up and running. Once you do get it up and running, once I've downloaded the Bootstrapper and got it installed and loaded, the first thing that I want to do is create a new project. So I can click on this new project button. I'm going to create a new project called Strap Test. Click OK, and I'll get a brand new project created for me. So now that's in my project window, and I can click it and open it, and I see all of the assets here. You'll notice that the Bootstrapper is listing out all the source files for my project, the JS files, CSS files, less files. We perform less and or CoffeeScript compilation for you if you want. And then finally the HTML files in the project as well. So when you create a new project with Bootstrapper, we scaffold out a template that includes a basic widget, just so you know that everything's working. And you can see that by clicking on the preview window. You click that here, see that everything's working inside of this preview window. So I've got a functioning app, everything's included, and I can go from there. Yeah, which is pretty neat. So there's a lot more to show with the Bootstrapper, and I'm going to do that as well as show off some exciting new DataViz stuff inside of an existing project. So let's say that I've been working on a project elsewhere for a while, as many of you probably are once you're going to be using this Bootstrapper for the first time. And I want to import it into the Bootstrapper so that the tool can help me manage builds, perform static analysis, and things like that. So I'm going to click on this Import Bootstrapper button. And I'm going to, inside of my development folder, I'm going to go and find my app, which is going to be called the Kendo Runner Admin. Go into that directory, click OK, and I have my Kendo Runner Admin app here. And so that project's been imported, and I can click on Preview to actually see how things are going. And I've got the shell for my app, nothing else going on. In fact, I think there's a bug I'm going to have to track down in just a second, but we'll get back to that. So I've got my preview here, I've got all my different files, and not only does the Bootstrapper manage a running server to preview my app, but it also actually automatically refreshes the app as I go and make changes. So I'll show you that in a second as well. But because I know when I look at the preview window that I've got a bug here, I'm not going to use the DevTools in this case. I think the issue might be somewhere with the actual code, and I think I might have a tool in the Bootstrapper that can help me find it. So the first thing I'm going to do is run JS Hint. I'm going to click this JS Hint button, and that performs static analysis on my project to find out, are there errors in my app, just common JavaScript errors that are easy to miss, that the linter can catch for me. And it looks like I have a couple. I don't think these are the source of my problem, but I can track those down and find them pretty easily. So I'm going to go into my JavaScript file. It looks like one of the issues is a missing semicolon on line 60. So I'll go in and add that. And then the other issue is that I'm defining a variable that I never use. That's definitely not an issue, but the linter, I want to keep the linter happy, so I'll make those changes and it looks like I'm good. So I don't think that's going to solve it. Open the preview again, looks like I'm still missing some of my data here. So what I'll do now is run Kendo Lint. And similar to JS Hint, JS Hint is a great tool that gives you static analysis on generic use of JavaScript. We wanted to take that idea a step further and create a tool that actually looked at your use of Kendo UI widgets and configuration and provided automatic static analysis of those projects. So if you have a misspelling or mistake inside of your Kendo UI specific code, we can help find that. And that can be really awesome in those cases where you have a very large configuration object where you may have accidentally misspelled something. Hopefully we can save you some serious time looking at that. So when I click on the Kendo Lint button, it looks like, oh, look, there is no component called window with two W's. So I can find that issue, squash that bug right quick, rerun the linter, and it looks, oh, now there's another issue in there. Option heading not found on line 47. So it looks in my configuration object, there's an option here that I haven't provided, that doesn't exist. I want to set the title, but I'm not sure what this is. So what I can do now is step over into the API docs, which we've included in the Bootstrapper here as well. And I'm going to search for the window object, and maybe this can help me. Open up the API docs, I'll look at the configuration options, and oh, what do you know? There's a title option. There's not a heading option, but there's a title option, and that's what gives me the text in the window title bar. So that's ultimately what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go in and change this to title right quick, save it. Open up the preview. I'll actually run Kendo Lint. No warning, so I'm very happy now. So now that that's good, I can click the preview window and look, here I go. I've got some data. I've got my list of shoes on the page. So this is really exciting. And not only do I get some linting, some static analysis tools for Kendo specific objects as well, but because I'm running a server that gives you we're effectively running a server that shows you your app as you're working on it. We can also give you the capability in the Bootstrapper to make live updates to your app as you're making changes. But that also applies not just to JavaScript files, but less HTML and CSS files as well. So I can make some changes to the text here on my page, and notice I'll make those changes, set the font size up to 2Ms, change the color to salmon, and the Kendo Linter actually provides that auto update capability for you. And exciting for CSS files, it actually will apply those changes without refreshing the entire page. So it's a really exciting, very easy way to work on your app and to get quick feedback as you're making changes. So that's pretty neat. So all right. This is great, but now it's time to add some extra goodies to my app. And so you'll notice that when I click on one of the individual shoes, then I get this nice window that pops up with some additional information, like the current mileage and the ASIN, which is the Amazon identifier number. And I want to take that Amazon identifier number and I want to use a brand new DataViz widget, QR code. So as you know, we released QR codes and barcodes in the Q2 release of Kendo UI. And I'm going to put a QR code on the page that allows the user to scan that QR code and go to the Amazon product page so that they can order, so that they can make an order at any given time. So first thing that I'll do is I'm going to add a template here for this. That's going to represent my QR code. And then I'm going to add the QR code into my list view here. So when the list view is created and I get the window change function, I'll get the QR code and set that value to that URL and open that up. So now when I click on one of the shoes, I'll get a nice QR code there that I can scan. So really simple, really easy for me to add that. And again, as I made these changes, I didn't have to refresh the page. I was able to just interact with the app and see those changes happen along the Bootstrapper. And that's a really nice new widget for DataViz, and I highly recommend you check that out. So that's great. Now, while I'm here and I'm working with some widgets, I figured this is also a good place to add some additional data for all of my shoes. So I'm going to create a new chart type called the radar chart. Now, radar charts are a great way to show the distribution of multivariate data. So what I'm going to do is I want to show, I have some information I've collected about the time of day that I run and how long that I run for each shoe. So I'm going to use that information to actually plot some things out on my app. So first thing that I'm going to do is add a radar div to the page, and then I'm going to come into my JavaScript, back into my app, and actually create that chart itself. So as this is a new chart, it's just a new chart type off of Kendo chart. My series default here is just a radar line chart. There are different radar charts, radar line, area. We also have a polar chart type that we've released. But in this case, this fits for me. And I'm going to, for my series, show morning and afternoon runs, and then each shoe on the page. And so when I save that, scroll down, here is my data. So for each one of the shoes that I use, I'm getting some information about how far I typically go. I can use this information when I'm deciding which kind of shoes to reorder. What are my go-to shoes for certain kinds of runs? And that's another really exciting use and a very easy thing for me to do with Kendo UI DataViz, and when combined with the Bootstrapper, was really quick to get into my page. So now that my app is functional, I think I'm ready to ship it. So lucky for me, the Bootstrapper has some tools that help me in this department. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to create a custom build of Kendo UI. So I can click on the Build Kendo button. And you'll notice here that this actually automatically inspects my app and finds out what widgets I'm using to give me the best sized version of Kendo UI possible. So this is similar to our custom build tool that we have on the server side in your account, but something that we've added automatically into the Bootstrapper. Really, really nice minified version. So you'll go all the way from this 993K, almost 1 meg version of Kendo UI all.min.js. And when I click build, I now get a version that's 122K. Now, that is a huge savings just on the widgets that I'm using, and that makes a huge difference in my apps. And so now that I've linted everything and I've got a nice optimal build, it's time for me to create a bundle. So when I click on the bundle button, what that's going to do is it's going to give me an option. I can get some compiled and minified files, but effectively what this does, it'll give me a production build or a minified build in a zip file that I can then download and deploy that automatically to my site. So I can open this up, see what's going on in here, and inside of my index file, if I open this up inside of a tool like Sublime Text, I can see that I've got this concatenated version of all of my script files together. I've created this. This is very easy, ready for me to deploy onto my production site. And that's really exciting. So once again, with Kendo UI DataViz and with Kendo UI Bootstrapper, there's a lot to love in this Q2 release. We'd love to have you check out the Bootstrapper at labs.kendoui.com and give us some feedback during this beta timeframe. Back to you once again, Todd.
Thanks, Brandon. As he mentioned, if you do want to check out the Kendo UI Bootstrapper, labs.kendoui.com is the place to go. Another place where we'd love to get your feedback, and I think you're really going to like what you see there, and I hope you do enjoy playing with that tool. But as long as we're talking about the Kendo UI Lab, some place that's been very active since we introduced it originally in the last release, I think it's worth providing a little update about what's been going on there, because a lot of you have been very active in contributing to the labs. Some very exciting projects going on there. And if you're a fan of things like AngularJS or Knockout.js, there's been a lot of progress made there on those integrations that make it easy for you to use those libraries with Kendo UI. So I'm going to invite back to the stage Burke Holland to tell us briefly about what's been going on in the Kendo UI labs and give us a little demo of how you can work with some of those libraries that are out there. So Burke, the stage again is yours.
This is an especially exciting part of the keynote for me. Let's talk about the Kendo UI Labs. Last quarter, we announced the launch of the Kendo UI Labs organization. The goal of Kendo UI has always been to provide you everything you need, but not to browbeat you into using it. For instance, Kendo UI has MVVM, but many people either prefer Knockout or they already have a Knockout flavored project and they don't very well want the rug pulled out from underneath them just so they can use Kendo UI. Kendo UI provides a complete SPA implementation, but many people feel more comfortable with Backbone. And let's not forget AngularJS, a full stack library that has taken the community by absolute storm. While we can't possibly provide official support for every single JavaScript library that happens to pop up, we do try to make Kendo UI just opinionated enough to make your life easy, but not so much that you can't use it with other libraries. This desire to facilitate your freedom of choice was how the Kendo UI Labs were born. We have experienced an incredible spike of interest with the labs since we first launched it last quarter. And we even found one of the projects mentioned in a session at Google I/O. The attendees at FluentConf and other conferences are also very eager to hear about what the community around Kendo UI is doing and contributing. In fact, we've had so much interest that we've actually now had to form a labs core team. This team consists of community individuals who are not just entering issues, although we do love to see your issues, but are submitting pull requests and actively working on these projects. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to the labs core team. On the Knockout.js integrations, we have Ryan Niemeyer, or Mr. Knockout.js as we like to call him. And additionally, David Brotherstone, who fixed an issue with null object bindings in Knockout Kendo recently and submitted a quick fix that helped us, and we were able to merge that into the 6.1 release of the library. On the plugin side, we have John DeVite, who's just absolutely done a ton of work, mostly cleaning up my mess, plus adding a bunch of features and plugins that he's written. Jeff Valori, Jeff has worked as a member of the Kendo UI services team, and he's built a number of Kendo UI apps, including the mobile music store. And as part of that project, Jeff created the custom indexed list view widget that was recently added to the Kendo plugins repo. On the AngularJS side, we have Pierre Asselin and Omkar Patil. These guys architected the majority of the Angular integrations and worked tirelessly with me this quarter to be able to bring you the stable 5.1 release that we have today. Hats off to both of these guys who have taught me pretty much everything I know about AngularJS by working with me on this project. Our talented designer Vasil hooked us up with a sweet design for the Kendo UI Labs. We liked it so much that we've gone ahead and sent this design to print, so even as I speak, it's in the process of being baked onto some t-shirts. And these shirts will only go to Labs core team members. If you see these shirts out in the wild, you can be sure that the person it's on knows more than just a thing or two about Kendo UI. So a huge hug from all of us at Kendo UI to all of you in the community who have stepped up, given your time and energy so that everyone can benefit. Are you interested in becoming a Labs core team member? We've got over 14 projects to choose from, and they are just waiting for your pull request. All right, let's talk about what's been happening recently in Labs. As many of you know, our own Derek Bailey knows a thing or two about Backbone with his work on the ridiculously popular Marionette project. He recently added two-way syncing between the Backbone collections and the Kendo UI data source, and also recorded a really nice video for you earlier this week showing off a couple of the new bits. Brandon just added the Kendo UI forms polyfill. Now, HTML5 forms and new input types would be great if browser support wasn't so darn flaky. This polyfill automatically sniffs out your input types and gives you a Kendo UI styled text box, numeric text box, date picker, upload, whatever the appropriate form field is. And most importantly, it looks consistent across browsers. We love JavaScript here at Kendo UI, there's no doubt about that, but even we mistype property names sometimes. There are tools like JSHint and JSLint that can help you with this by analyzing your code before you run it and warning you of potential errors or bad practices. We've been talking about doing this in Kendo UI for a long time. Brandon and I tossed around several ideas ourselves, but thanks to Mihai Baizan on the team, this is now here in the labs. Now you can install this package with npm install Kendo lint with the global flag. Once you have this installed, you simply execute it against your file and it will shell out any errors to the console. We're currently working to make this part of a Grunt plugin so that you can just have it watch your code all the time, and the Kendo linter will tell you as you save your files where potential mistakes might be. Lastly, but surely not leastly, Angular Kendo UI enjoyed its official release just 2 weeks ago. We're really excited about this project because we feel like the AngularJS stack is very compelling, and a framework that good deserves a good UI. Let's take a look at how you can use AngularJS with Kendo UI today using Angular Kendo UI. Now, if you've worked with AngularJS before, you know that this is kind of like magic. So we can come in here and add an input here, and then I'm going to assign this an ng model, which is an AngularJS directive. And then we can actually reference that model with this double bracket syntax here. Now this looks just like you would expect it to. But if we come back and we add in the ng app tag at the top, now it's an Angular app, and these two fields are bound. So as I type, it updates the span in real time. Now, the Kendo UI directives work similarly here. If we go down here and open up a script tag, we can go ahead and declare our main module, this is just typical for AngularJS, and we'll just call it my app. And then we need to pass in our intention to use the Kendo directives. And those are specified in the last script tag there. I've already included them. And once we've actually declared our intention to use that directive, we can come up here and add in our module to the app, and now we can start using these directives. So maybe we want to take out this name tag, and instead we'll put in, say, a calendar. The way we do that is Kendo dash then the widget name. So if we refresh, you can see we automatically get a Kendo UI calendar control. And because of the integration with AngularJS, we can actually just come over here and specify the same ng model tag on this calendar, and it will go ahead and directly bind the same way that a regular HTML element would, and you can see it's being updated there in the corner. Now we can create other widgets this way as well with this k-widget name syntax. For instance, usually you have a controller to go along with Angular, and in your controller you have a scope, and that scope is really your view model that has some things on it that you can bind to it. So in this case we actually have an array of actual things, but we may want to bind, say, a drop-down list to this list of things. So to do that, we would specify, like you normally would in AngularJS, the controller or the ng controller directive, and then once inside of that we can use the kendo-drop-down list, which declares a drop-down list, and then we can just set its k-data-source to things. And all configuration values are set with that k-attribute. And now you can see that it's populated with things, just bound directly to the controller. We can continue to bind this into AngularJS with the ng model just like we did before, and you can see the page is updated. Now, if you go to the project page for the Kendo UI Labs, it's the Angular Kendo project page, you'll see that we have tons of examples to help you get started up and running very quickly. We've tried to break it down and make it as simple as possible. In addition, we've got some examples on how to get widget references inside of controllers, and some more complex examples like the grid and some of the DataViz stuff. You can see the binding here between the slider and the radial gauge here. So really tight integration between AngularJS and Kendo UI. This is Angular Kendo UI. We're really excited about it. So that's the update on the Kendo UI Labs. Thank you so much for all you do. We love all you guys and girls out there, and we cannot wait to see your pull requests. Todd?
Thanks, Burke. Hopefully you guys enjoyed what Burke showed you there. Some really cool things happening, particularly if you're a fan of working on our open source labs projects, or things like AngularJS and Knockout.js and how they can integrate with Kendo UI. So we've reached that wrap-up portion of today's presentation. I know we've sort of reached the end of our time together today as well. As always, everything in Kendo UI is available both individually via the web, DataViz, and mobile licenses, and as a complete package, something called Kendo UI Complete, which bundles web, DataViz, and mobile, along with providing you access to extra benefits like private build tools, the hotfixes we call them, as well as unlimited tickets. So the individual packages give you 10 tickets. You can get unlimited tickets with Kendo UI Complete. If you're a server-side developer or a fan of ASP.NET MVC, Java JSP, or PHP development, then of course we have those licenses available as well. That's a superset of Kendo UI Complete, so it's everything Kendo UI Complete includes, plus the server-side wrappers in the language of your choice. And since today we've also introduced the Kendo UI mobile wrappers for ASP.NET MVC, that's included in that Kendo UI Complete purchase for the server-side wrappers. If you're an existing active subscription holder, then your licenses will be upgraded today to the latest and greatest bits in the Q2 2013 release. Visit your account and you should find them there. And of course, as we like to do, for those of you who took the time today to join us, to be excited with us about today's release, we want to give you a special Keynote promo. So if you're looking to buy Kendo UI, check that area right here to the right of where we're presenting today. You should see the special Keynote promo code there, 20% off on your purchases. It expires very soon, so don't wait around too long. And if you forget, we'll send the code to you in the follow-up emails from today's event. And if you want to talk more about Kendo UI and talk more about how to do development with Kendo UI, we've got another Kendo UI Tech Chat webcast coming up a week from today, Wednesday, July 24th at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll be talking about spas, single-page applications, all about spas and how you can use Kendo UI with spas. Kendo UI developer advocates Burke Holland and Derek Bailey will be on hand to talk about that. It's an informal format, very different from today, so if you want to come chat with developers and learn from them about spas and how to use Kendo UI, a week from today is the time, and we'll make sure you get the registration links well ahead of that. And of course, I know a lot of you are wondering, well, what about those great prizes you talked about up front? When do we get to find out if you're the lucky winner? We will be drawing the winners immediately after today's event, and we'll be posting the winners on our Twitter account at Kendo UI, as well as blogging about the winners this week as well. So if you want to know if you won or know who won, who the lucky ones are, make sure you follow us at Kendo UI, and in the next 24 hours, you'll see the winners announced there. Good luck. And then as we like to say at the end of every event like this, now there's only one thing left to do. Go download the latest Kendo UI release. There's a ton of great stuff in there, modern, mobile, and lightning fast. We think you're really going to love what you find across all of the things that we've done. We hope you go download that today. And as a reminder, again, also be sure to check out Isenium.com for the things like custom Cordova plugins, the new mobile designer features, as well as Isenium EverLive for getting that data into your web or your mobile apps. Tons of great stuff happening here at Telerik. We're really excited. We hope you're excited too. Go to KendoUI.com today, download, and have fun. Now we're going to transition to a live Q&A portion of today's event where we're going to answer as many of your questions as we can. If you have questions that you've not logged in the Q&A manager, now's a great time to start logging those. We'll be reviewing and picking our questions from there. If we've reached the end of the time you have available to spend with us today, thank you very much for joining us for this online keynote. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to see you again at the next Kendo UI online keynote.